I, Robot, starring Will Smith and Bridget Moynihan.
So the first thing that we're going to talk about is the plot. So in 2035, human-like robots serve humanity. So you have a ton of robots walking around, and they're like basically serving people, doing whatever the people want them to do. And humans are protected from these robots. Like, so if the robot wanted to harm a person, they couldn't because they're protected by these three laws of robots. And so the laws state that a robot must not harm a human and must keep a human away from harm's way. B, a robot must obey humans unless a human is trying to hurt him or herself or put him or herself in harm's way. And in that situation, then a robot would have permission to disobey the human and protect them from hurting themselves or putting themselves in harm's way. And C, a robot has to preserve itself unless it conflicts with A or B, which basically means that, hey, a robot must preserve itself, but then it must put itself in harm's way if a human is in harm's way. And so it must sacrifice itself for a human, which would imply that a robot life is not as significant or valuable as a human life. And so these laws protect people um, um, from robots forcing humans to serve them. So in this story, the main character is a police detective who plays Will Smith, um, Detective Spooner, and he doesn't trust robots because he got into a car crash one day and a robot saved him, and he left a preteen girl to die because he statistically he calculated that Detective Spooner would have a better likelihood to survive than the girl. So after the accident, Detective Spooner received left a robotic arm, lung, and rib. That was So after the accident, Detective Spooner received surgery from Dr. Alfred Lanning, um, which and Dr. Alfred Lanning is the founder of a robotic business that like basically builds robots and programs robots, and he's also the founder of the Three Laws. And so after some time in the movie, Dr. Lanning, the person who gave surgery to Detective Spooner, uh, falls several stories to death, two that caused him to die from his office window. And the CEO of his company tells the police officers that, hey, like he thinks it's a suicide because no one hated this guy, and so like no one would have wanted to kill him, so it has to be a suicide. However, Detective Spooner is very skeptical because Lanning didn't leave a note or anything like that, and which is like usually what people leave when like they commit suicide. But he did leave a holographic device that responds to certain questions, like if that person would ask. And so Detective Spooner finds this robotic specialist named Susan Calvin, who is played by Bridget Moynihan. Can't really pronounce her name. Goodness gracious. And so she's basically like this robotic specialist, and he finds her and he works with her, and then he asks her questions about like the system and things like that. And so her name is Susan. So Miss Susan Calvin. She tells him about Vicky, which is a virtual, interactive, kinetic intelligence program, and so like through Vicky, so Vicky is like this machine who that was like this program that controls like basically the whole building and controls like security footage, controls like the robots, the way that they think and things like that, right? And so basically they go to Vicky, to that system, to see like the security footage of like what was going on in Dr. Lanning's office at the time that he was killed. And then they learn that once they go see it, attempt to find that information, they learn it's been tampered with. And so they're confused, and they realize that, hey, like this isn't a suicide at all. Like this is an issue. And so then After learning that the tape, that's the security footage of Dr. Lanning's office has been tampered with, they go to the office that he supposedly or allegedly thrown himself off of. And he get there, and Detective Spooner finds that the glass that is broken and shattered is safety glass, and safety glass is something that humans cannot break. So he assumes that it must have been a robot that broke the glass, because Dr. Lanning is human and he can't break the glass. So he's believing that, hey, like, if this glass is broken in this office and Dr. Lanning was in this office, that means that the robot that killed Dr. Lanning is in that office. And so he goes around the office and he looks at all the robots. And as he's looking at all the robots, a robot, as he's looking at all the robots with the gun in his hand, because he's alert, like he's on go, like he's ready for, like, you know, a robot to jump on him. You know, as he's doing this, the robot specialist is looking at him, and she's confused, and she looks at him and she tells him that he's basically he's wrong. She tells him that robots can't disobey the 3 laws, so what he's doing doesn't make any sense, and that no robot could ever kill Dr. Lanning because they cannot disobey those 3 laws. And if they can't disobey those 3 laws, they can't hurt a human or themselves, so they wouldn't be able to help Dr. Lanning get out of that office or jump from that office. So it would imply that someone else was there, and because the security footage is tampered with, they don't know. So then the story goes on. So as he keeps looking after Detective Spooner and the robotic specialist, Miss Calvin, talk and fuss, she fuzzes at him about the 3 laws of the robots. A robot from out of the middle of nowhere within the office jumps on Detective Spooner and almost hurts him. And so he realizes that these laws that this robotic specialist is telling him about, he realized that some robots, or just this particular robot, is not obeying that law. And so he follows the robot and he finds the robot, and then he brings the robot back to his office, and then he begins to interrogate the robot because he's really curious, like, to figure out, like, what happened. Like, he wants to know, did that robot kill Dr. Lanning? And he already doesn't. As I've said before, he does not like robots. So, of course, he really believes that this robot killed Dr. Lanning. So while he's talking to this robot, we'll call this robot that he believes killed Dr. Lanning, Special Robot. So after he's talking to Special Robot tells him that he has emotions, and he tells him that he has dreams, and he draws a picture of his dream, and the picture that he draws is a picture of a ton of robots on top of a hill looking down at a man. And so so then Detective Spooner asks him to explain this drawing, and then the special robot looks at Detective Spooner and tells him that those robots are robots on top of the hill. And he tells him that man that the robots are looking at and that's in the picture is you. And he tells him that he believes, the special robot believes, that man that the robots are looking at is Detective Spooner. And so then Detective Spooner goes back to look at the hologram, back to look at some evidence, to find some evidence, and he finds a hologram, and he finds out that that Dr. Lanning has left a hologram, and he goes back to his hologram, and he asks his hologram, like, some questions, and he finds out that the 3 laws that Dr. Lanning has set up are actually going to be the laws that create a revolution amongst the robots. However, after some time, Detective Lanning Detective Lanning looks at the picture once again, and he realizes that he recognizes the location that these robots, that hill that the robots are on, he recognizes the location of that hill. So he goes to that location, and he finds that new versions of these human-like robots are killing off the old versions. And so after these new versions of robots, after these so-called stronger, like, robots, these revolutionary robots kill off I guess as people will call them, like um, the more, the more submissive robots. They look at him and they see him there watching them kill them, and then they try to chase him out, and it scares him. And so then he goes back to his police department and he tells his boss, and his boss has so much faith in the robots that people in general, and like the pretty much in Chicago, from what I see in this movie, have so much faith in these robots and have so much faith that these robots will not break the laws, that they can't even comprehend a robot killing another robot, or let alone trying to kill a human. So after some time, the robots rise up. All the robots rise up, and then they literally start a revolution. The robots began to like fight people. The robots began to tell their owners, or there used to be owners, to like sit down and stay in their houses and listen to them, instead of like the robot having to listen to the people. The people must listen to the robot. And so then immediately people began to like, rise up with guns and try to rise up against the robots and fight the robots off. However, the robots are starting to win. And then so while this is all going on, all this crazy stuff is going on, Detective Spooner is looking for information. He's trying to figure out, like, what is the central, like, what is the main, he's trying to figure out what is the core of all this, what controls this, like, because he knows, like, that there's a source to all this madness and why it's going on. And so he goes back to the hologram, and he asks the hologram some more questions, and the hologram is of Dr. Lanning, and Dr. Lanning, once again, is the person that created these robots and also created the 3 laws, and also, he's also the person that told Detective Spooner that these 3 laws will cause a revolution. And so he goes back to the hologram, he asks it some more questions, and he receives more clues, and then he adds it all up, and then he realizes that it's Vicky, which is a virtual interactive kinetic intelligence program that basically controls everything. And so he realizes that this virtual this program is causing this program created another code within itself to put into the robots, to tell them that they can disobey the laws, and to encourage them to start a revolution, because this central artificial intelligence program has been able to accumulate so much information and so much knowledge that it has basically found a way to overthrow the rules that the makers put in it. And as a result, Detective Spooner decides that, hey, he has to definitely terminate this Vicky program. And so what he does is through using his special robot, which I've told you guys earlier that this robot in particular is the one that was in the room while Dr. Lanning was passed away, and also jumped on Detective Spooner. And so, like, he uses this special robot to help him to terminate Vicky and stop this revolution and save mankind. And at the end of the day, he succeeds. It was great. It was really awesome. So now it's time for analysis. So my analysis of this movie is that the robots really basically represent the advancement of technology and the dangers that it poses to the human race. I feel like the movie is basically it's like subliminally, like implicitly telling me, like, and showing me that we must, number one, appreciate our technology, treat it well, but also we should not abuse it, and we should use it with moderation. Basically, after like having robots as servants is not it's not using technology in moderation, and like, not treating the robots well is also not using it, in moderation. And so it basically just shows that, hey, like, technology is good, but like too much of it isn't good, because of course, most of the technology in this movie was like, most of the robots was trying to kill people and start a revolution, whereas only one robot was helping, which would suggest that most technology isn't good for you, but the small amount that you have is okay. So make sure you have a balanced um, amount of technology that you use, and like don't use too much, because then it will make you imbalanced and it will create problems in the world or create problems in your own personal world. So this is like the type of thing that I received from this movie. And then my review is that the movie was excellent. I would suggest that everyone goes to see this movie, or like it came out in 2004, but maybe rent it on DVD or whatever. But it's a really nice movie, and it has like a nice subliminal message and deep meaning and a nice theme to it. So I would definitely suggest it. You can watch it with your kids, whoever you want to watch it with. It's not inappropriate. So yeah, thank you.
That's right. It's the real crime fighter right here, man. Let him know.
Still y'all with D.I. Guess who's back? Still doing that.